Welcome in to Postgame Live on channel BSR after another Orioles loss. It's a Tuesday, it's a Thursday, there's Postgame Live. Of course, the Orioles lost. I'm Jake English from the Bird's Eye View podcast, joined by Scott Magnus, also of the Bird's Eye View podcast, and also by Connor Garcia, a BSR contributor. Hello, fellas.
Thanks for that rousing introduction, Jake. I really feel enthusiastic coming on this program on every Tuesday and Thursday night to talk about the Orioles losing every single time. So, yeah, maybe we should end this fiasco and help the Orioles out in the process.
It was a feel-good game. It's going to be a feel-good show, minus all the good feels. So here we are to talk about the Orioles game against the Yankees. They dropped the game and also dropped a full game back in the standings to 5 games behind the New York Yankees. As we so often do, let's go ahead and give it the highlights and lowlights of the game. Scotty, what was your highlight for this game?
My highlight for the game, there really wasn't much, actually. In my opinion, the Orioles kind of had a ho-hum game, but being able to come back down 2-0 on the road and hit with runners in scoring position have to be the highlight for me for this game. It's good to see them start to break out of that drought, and it's also good that we don't have to hear Jake English sing that song anymore.
Anytime I'm not singing is a good day. Connor, what about you? What was your highlight for the game?
Hardy getting a hit off a left-handed pitcher and actually scoring a run.
That is fewer and further between than we'd like this season, so that is a good highlight. My highlight for the game was Manny Machado's walk to lead off the game. It was the first time that I really felt like the Orioles had a chance, and it turned out that they were also few and far between.
Well, that's depressing.
All right, well, let's take it to the depressing zone. What are the lowlights from this game? Scotty, we'll start again with you. What was your lowlight?
Well, it's going to have to be... well, I think someone else is going to cover it. It has to be Dylan Betances and Andrew Miller coming in for the 8th and 9th inning and shutting the door. As soon as Wilson came out of the game, the left-handed middle relief pitcher, you kind of knew that the game was over right there and then, barring a miracle. That's my low light of the game.
All right, Connor?
Tommy Hunter and Brian Mattis both work an inning. They give up no runs, and the Orioles still lose by a run.
That's pretty depressing.
That is good perspective, and since someone horribly stole my low light of the game of watching Dylan Betances walk in from the bullpen and the foreboding feeling, I will say that my low light of the game was the 10 consecutive batters after Manny Machado's walk, in which the Orioles couldn't muster a hit. So that was my low light for the game. And with that good news, let's walk through the defense, the offense, and of course the pitching. Let's start with the defense. I thought there was a lot actually going on in this game defensively, and I want to start with talking about Wei-Yin Chen with his play in the top of the first inning. Chen really plays his position well. He fields very well as a pitcher, and I'm not sure if he's underrated in that regard or not, but it was a great flip play to the first baseman, and I was hoping that somebody else could provide some insight on whether or not Wei-Yin Chen is underrated as a defensive player.
I'm going to pull the Mike Bordick thing. He deserves to be a Gold Glover because he's only had one earned run the entire season, because earned runs for error for a pitcher is a great way to determine whether he's a great defensive pitcher.
Easy. It's not on a screen. You can't read it. You can't be Mike Bordick.
Look, we've talked about Wei-Yin Chen before, and, the flip play was nice, but, again, being able to get over to the base quick enough is just good fundamental baseball, but I wouldn't classify Chen as a Gold Glove pitcher. Nice play, tip the cap, moving on.
All right, Connor, break the tie. Is he the best ever, or is he terrible?
He's good at fielding his position. I'll take the medium on that.
All right. So we're running right down the middle.
Yeah,
more Mike Bordick impressions.
It's never a good idea. It's never a good idea for this. All right. Also, we had a tremendous play by Ellsbury in center to rob Chris Davis of a single, or was it?
That was a terrible play. The route efficiency on that was horrible. He slowed up, kind of slipped out there, and then basically had to fall to his knees in order to catch it. I'm not even sure why this is in the defensive category. This is awful.
Because I'm going to ask you this question. how much of that play do you think will get played on highlights?
Oh, there won't be. Well, who cares about? I mean, they're just going to show the good parts of the game for the Yankees. That's not going to get shown up on any web gems or anything like that.
I thought as soon as I saw that play happen, that the end of that play would get shown in the highlight reels for this game, no matter how it ended. With the glorious play by Ellsbury in center field, diving to steal a hit from Chris Davis.
Now they'll show the play with Ellsbury going over his shoulder and catching the ball on a running leap to keep Reimold from scoring and tying the ball game up at second base.
Absolutely. All right. Well, what about our Orioles? What did we see from our Orioles defensively tonight?
I really like that one play with Travis Snyder out in left field with the diving effort. Didn't come up with the ball, but I just like the play personally. I think that showed really good range, good route efficiency, and though he didn't get to it, I was very encouraged by that.
And this is not the first time that we've seen Travis Snyder make a good play going to his left. That unbelievable play he made at Camden Yards on Gnome Night is another one that comes to mind. What about you, Connor? What did we see defensively from the Orioles tonight?
I think the big takeaway was the Snyder effort, just because it looked exactly like the one he did on the game against the Indians. Little miscues here and there, and of course the Machado, he just missed it going out of his glove, and I think it was Young who hit it, and it just got down the line. It's like, well, if it was anybody else but Machado, that's down the line for a double. So. Sure.
Manny Machado spoils us with his play. We had the audacity to be disappointed in the fact that he didn't reel that in. On the not so nice side, on the Orioles, Jonathan Scope ended up booting a ball. I think it was the fifth inning. In the bottom of the fifth inning, he booted a ball going to his right. Just looked like a nasty hop. Connor, one of the things we've talked about on Bird's Eye View the last couple of weeks is Jonathan Scope's mobility. Coming off that PCL strain, I thought the mobility was going to be a problem for him. I thought defensively he was going to struggle. Hitting, he'd be fine. But what have you seen from Scope since he's been back from his injury?
He had the good range play when he was playing the shift against Detroit. I haven't seen much limited mobility from him. I don't get a chance to watch that many home games, so I've only been able to catch what he's done on the road. And I think he's doing better than expected. I expected him to have some problems with the range when he first came back, but it's looking better and better.
And certainly the arm bails him out when he does have an occasional bobble. That's for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Is there anything else defensively that I've missed, or can we move ahead to the offense?
Move on.
All right. Offensively, the Orioles are a little sleepy for the first part of the game. Didn't rack up a hit until Adam Jones' infield squib, but after that it got a little bit more exciting. What did we see from the Orioles this evening that you want to dive into, Connor?
I think how they wasted the first inning walk and Machado getting thrown right off the bases.
And it was not the only time in the game that they did waste a leadoff walk. Am I correct on that? I think it was Wieters that walked later on.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah.
I think it's Derek Arnold over at Utah Street Report who's really good at tweeting out whenever the Orioles waste a leadoff run, but point out that it always seems to burn them in the reverse.
You know what Dempsey says, nothing good happens after a walk unless you're the Orioles and you're hitting.
Absolutely. Scotty, let's talk a little bit about Jonathan Scope again. Had a very exciting at-bat against Eovaldi. Nothing came of it, but it was pretty exciting for about 10 seconds there, right?
For about 10 seconds, yeah, with the near home run, kind of, and then the double down the line. Yeah, it was kind of exciting. The one big thing that I wanted to point out was looking at the bottom of the lineup, excluding Nolan Reimold, who pinch hit for Travis Snyder, the bottom lineup with Snyder, Scope, Parmalee, and then even turning it over to go to the one hole with Manny Machado, were all hitless tonight. That's a pretty big gap there. Not necessarily saying that was the reason why the Orioles didn't win tonight, but it's just an interesting scenario where if you look at the Yankees lineup, you've got hits all the way through the order from top to bottom.
Yeah, it was really the lower half of the middle of the order that did all the damage for the Orioles tonight. Yeah. Both runs worth. The other thing I wanted to talk about offensively was a little bit of Tuplan. So the Orioles start scoring some runs. Jones comes in to tie up the game, and Matt Wieters gets caught between second and third. Um, I was frantically jumping up and down and cheering, so I may have missed Matt Wieters' turn at second base. Was this poor base running, or was he simply caught because of his speed?
I say it was poor base running personally. Even if the ball is not cut off and goes into the catcher, with Matt Weir's speed, one would think that he'd be thrown out at third base pretty quickly based off of where he was caught in the rundown. I think it was just poor base running, and I don't think they were expecting him to have as good of a throw as he did.
Now, Connor, and I don't know if this is something you happen to catch on the broadcast, but with the runner scoring from going around third to score there, is the runner going into second base on his own, head on a swivel, or is he depending on a signal from the third base coach? Is this all on Wieters, or was this partly windmill as well?
I think Dickerson might, because you don't know where they're looking, where to see the ball is. It might be Dickerson, it might be just Wieters. But I think with that going second to third, I think it's more the player's instinct. Because the third base coach just tell him slide or, stand up or slow down.
They're excited. They're like, hey, we haven't been doing this lately. I'm just going to keep running until I'm told to stop.
Well, it also helps when Matt Wieters doesn't run like he's got a lead-lined refrigerator on his back with J.J. Hardy inside of it.
Let's also admit too that before that play, Matt Wieters did have the RBI single with 2 outs and a runner in scoring position. So as much as we want to beat him up for getting thrown out at second, we do have to give him a slight bit of credit for getting that RBI single.
Absolutely. Want to talk a little bit about something offensively that happened for the Yankees, and that's going to transition into the pitching. The first inning, the Orioles wasted that leadoff walk. Manny Machado gets picked off, and then of course they go on to get out 10 straight times in a row. But the interesting thing was then in the bottom of the first inning, the Yankees turned right around and scored a run. They scored a run with a double that was just fair. I mean, just barely fair. It would have been interesting to see if they had taken another look at it. And Scott, I wanted to ask you if you saw the play. Was it a cheap hit? Was this just the BABIP Dragons going after Chen? Was it poorly located pitching? What was it about that particular play? And did that carry on throughout Chen's evening?
It certainly seemed, at least to me, that Chen was a little off tonight in terms of command. There was no walks, but putting together 10 hits over only 6 and a third is certainly not a great night. And I know people are going to say, well, it's a quality start because they were able to hold him to 3 earned runs and 6 and a third innings pitched. But when you give up 10 hits in that same bit, I'm not sure if I would qualify it as a great start. Above average, certainly. But there were certainly lots of bounces and stuff like that certainly felt that way. But that's baseball. And, the Yankees put good, solid contact on a lot of balls, didn't really see a lot of blooping, dying hits. And not to mention, the Yankees were, I think, 1 for 10 with runners in scoring position through the game. So it's not like the Orioles didn't have their chances to capitalize against a team that wasn't succeeding. So I can't blame the BABIP Dragon or the BABIP gods on this.
All right. So, yeah, I can't argue with the results, just the 3 runs given up. That's fine. But, Connor, I'm curious as to what you think, because it seemed like even though Chen's results were good, you were never really comfortable watching him pitch because it seems like the Yankees always had something going on.
Yeah, no. It's like every inning a guy would get on with feel like it'd be a blue pit or a walk, and you just, like he said, 10 hits is not the greatest start in the world. He held him 3 runs, but if you're going to let guys get on, they're going to get chances to score. You're never going to feel comfortable with this guy on the mound. I think he did all right for what he was held and what he was dealt with the offense struggling. He definitely kept the Orioles in the game, but in the end, he still gave up that run in the his last inning and just sealed the Orioles' fate after that because who was going to come out for the Yankees in the bullpen.
Right. So, I mean, Chen did give up a run in the first inning. He gave up a run in the second inning, but then did a good job of minimizing that damage. He wriggled out of trouble in the bottom of the fourth. He wriggled out of trouble again in the fifth. And then in the sixth inning, he gave the Yankees a lead after the Orioles had tied it up. So, again, not a bad start, but a troublesome one. What about Tommy Hunter's appearance in the game? A little bit of drama there. Connor, what did you see from Tommy Hunter tonight?
After he had the bases loaded, I thought his stuff moved better. Had some good pitches. Some of the guys he struck out. I think he had like a 1-2 count, had a nice breaking pitch to get the guy out. He recovered well after letting the bases get loaded. And I think he came in to relieve Chen, and I never feel comfortable with Tommy Hunter coming in to relief with guys on. So I think he did well in that aspect.
So he pulls the Darren O'Day, loads the bases, and then gets to work. Scotty, we had a near boom situation from Tommy Hunter. Things looked like they were certainly going to be interesting, but he managed to pull it together at the end there, right?
Hold a Houdini, and as much as we would like to say, oh, Tommy Hunter's about to go boom, overall he's been pretty decent this entire season. If we're going to criticize him for loading the bases and stuff like that, then we should equally be criticizing Darren O'Day when he pulls similar Houdini acts.
I would say that he seductively relieved this evening.
I see what you did there.
So much so that I think he's one of the few players that we could flip at the trade deadline for some real value. A game like this certainly helps that, right?
Real value. Real value. Yeah, you must be drinking tonight. Okay, continue on.
We also got an appearance, a rare, non-disastrous appearance from my favorite reliever, Brian Mattis.
Well, the Yankees basically came up in that inning and said, well, we really don't need to score any more runs. We've got Andrew Miller coming out here, so let's just go ahead and get these fans home tonight. And it worked out really well for everybody.
Look, we really feel bad about what we did to him in the 2012 playoffs, so we're just going to leave this one right here. That's all the runs we need.
Had to bring that up.
He's my favorite reliever. He is my absolute favorite.
Had to bring up 2012. You're a dick. You're a big old dick.
The Orioles made me angry tonight. It's an angry post-game live. All right, so that's all we had from the Orioles pitching side. What about Eovaldi? Eovaldi had quite the velocity going. He had the heat when he needed it, and also the breaking stuff that made all of the heat work. I was interested though to see that he was pulled as quickly as he was. It seemed like as soon as he got in trouble, he was gone. Connor, do you think that was a matter of the Orioles, despite not being able to scratch too many runs across, working the count? Or was it just the fact, you think, that Joe Girardi knew that he had what he needed in the bullpen to close the door?
I think it's a thing of Joe Girardi doesn't know how to work his bullpen. He was high in the pitch count, but he was I think he allowed the single to Wieters, and I think he had an out before that, but it was a weird move to the pen because usually that's the kind of situation Buck sticks with his starter, and he went right to Justin Wilson, so it was kind of interesting.
And then, Scott, what about you? Do you think he was pulled prematurely, or do you think it was handled just perfectly?
I think he was probably pulled a little prematurely, but he was at 99 pitches there. He was starting to get hit around a little bit harder, but certainly it wasn't like Wilson coming in was, completely dominant either. So I don't know. Joe Girardi does this all the time, where he seems to make the right moves with his bullpen. As much as it frustrates us to be like, God, you put so many relievers in there, he generally does a pretty good job in bullpen management, and that reflects in an over performance for his team in years past.
And Wilson was really the Orioles' last best chance to get back into the game, or at least tie it back up, because you knew what you were getting with Betances and with Andrew Miller. As soon as Betances comes in, it's not a good feeling.
Yeah, totally agree.
All right, so that's going to do it for the pitching. We could go into how Betances and Andrew Miller shut down the Orioles, but that's just not a good feel. Let's go ahead into the bottom line takeaway from this game. We're going to start with you, Connor, this time. What is your bottom line takeaway from this game that we saw tonight?
Most likely, offense hit with some guys in scoring position, got hits with guys on base. Bullpen was solid. Decent start from Chen. It's just a little bit unluckiness when it came to the third run he gave up. But, solid performance. Still would like more offense, obviously, but can't go wrong with getting hits with guys in scoring position, especially since they've been struggling with it for a while. and just hope he can get enough runs before the seventh or eighth inning when they're going to bring in either even Chase and Shreve, who's been great out of the bullpen for them, and then Betances and Miller.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you, Scotty? What is your bottom line takeaway for this game?
This game needed what we all need in our lives, more dongs. And the Orioles not having dongs tonight really came back and killed them. A lot of small ball, but again, everyone always complains about that short portion in right field, and the Orioles weren't able to take advantage of it, especially with a left-handed dominant lineup with Davis, Snyder, Parmalee in there, and without putting some good contact in there. And I know coming back, and Eovaldi is a ground ball pitcher and doesn't really go up home runs, but the ability to limit the home run does have a major impact on the Orioles' offense.
Well, they didn't have their dominant home run left-handed hitter, David Lowe, in the lineup, who, as our friends at the OBP podcast reminded us during the bevies, that he had the most clutch dong of the 2015 season. If only we had had our savior, David Lowe. For me, the bottom line takeaway is that this loss hurts. It pushes the Orioles to 5 games back, and it puts them kind of behind the 8 ball in the series. It's not too late for them to win the series, but they are definitely in a precarious position. If they fall too far behind in this series, it could mean some damning things for their season. This series had the ability to either leave the Orioles 1 game back from the Yankees or a distant 7. So they have their work cut out for them now to make sure that they don't fall too far back here in July, trailing the Yankees. Do we have probable pitchers for tomorrow, Scott?
We do. It'll be Kevin Gausman coming up from AAA Norfolk. A roster move will be made by the Orioles before the game. And for the Yankees, we have Ivan Nova starting for the Yankees, making his 5th start of the year. So far on the season, he's only pitched in 4 games, and he has a 3.42 ERA. Really great ground ball pitcher at 50%. But I will point out, over the past few games, he struggled a little bit, not getting the strikeouts like he used to. Only about 3 strikeouts per 9 innings, and only going about 5 2/3 an inning pitched. The Orioles are going to need to put some line drives and get away from the ground balls, just like they had tonight. And we'll see what happens against Eovaldi, against Ivan Nova.
All right, there we have it for tomorrow. Now, I'm going to get back to Scott because I think I already know his answer. But, Connor, move needs to get made for tomorrow to bring up Kevin Gausman. Who do you think is going to be moved out to make room for him?
Chris Parmalee. 0 for 3 tonight. Been struggling ever since, the 19-run game, really. I just think he's the odd man out at this point. And then once Gausman has a start, he's going to get sent back down. They're going to bring up maybe Alvarez or maybe even Henry Rudio.
All right, so Scott, it's got to be Parmalee, right?
Yeah, it's got to be Parmalee. I don't see any reason. People have talked about either Reimold or Parmalee being the person that goes down or goes out. I don't see any reason why you designate for Simon Reimold at this time. I definitely would designate for Simon Parmalee. Even with the club control, he really just has not shown anything besides being a quadruple A player. And I'm going to have to disagree with Connor that when Gausman comes up, I think he's staying up here. Again, if we're going to option him, he's going to have to go down there and stay for 10 days. I just don't see the Orioles wanting to continue to yo-yo him through the second half. I think he stays up through the rest of the season unless he starts to not be as good of a pitcher as us Orioles fans hope he is during the second half.
How do they make room for him? Does somebody leave the rotation, or is there a trade in the works?
Who's leaving the rotation?
That's what I'm asking.
Is Bud Norris in the rotation now?
No, I suppose he's not. So they're going to leave. They're going to leave Norris there. They're going to be content there, and they're going to keep Kevin Gausman for the remainder of the season. Is what you're expecting to see?
I would think that would probably be the most obvious and best choice for the Orioles, as long as Kevin Gausman performs in the way that a lot of scouts and experts within baseball believe he can perform.
From your lips to God's ears, it would be a shame if he did struggle to see them send him right back down. I think they need to, at this point, at least let him get a couple starts under his belt to see if he can do it. But hopefully we won't have that issue. Last question for you about the move. If Chris Parmalee is the guy that goes, does Chris Davis return to first base, or does this mean more starts at first for Steve Pearce?
I think we're going to see more starts from Steve Pearce at first base, personally. That's just my opinion. I think Chris Davis actually filled in pretty well in right field. I think we'll see a good appearances by Steve Pearce in the future.
Connor, what do you think about Chris Davis in right field? Is he a natural right fielder and I'm not giving him enough credit, or do you hold your breath every time the ball gets hit out there?
He's not the ideal right fielder. He's good replacement level right fielder. And I think he's going to stay out there, and Pierce will probably play first base because I like Pierce more as a first baseman than I do a right fielder.
I must be in the gross minority because I think of Steve Pearce as a much better first baseman than anything else, but a league average, if not slightly above average, corner outfielder, whereas Chris Davis is much more valuable in the infield than he is in right field. But I will bow to both of your greater knowledge in that area.
They both are terrible. That's just what we're going to go with.
All right, well, on that note, a terrible game. The Orioles lose 3-2. All hope is not lost. They've still got 2 games against the New York Yankees before heading to Tampa to play a 3-game series there. Let's talk a little bit about what's going on this week. We'll be back on this show on Thursday for BSR Postgame Live. It's a 1 o'clock game, so it will be a very post-game. Expect another evening broadcast. We'll tweet out exactly when we will be broadcasting. But Scott, do me a favor. Tell me what we can expect to see on the Bird's Eye View podcast this week.
The Bird's Eye View podcast, episode 131, discussed who would form the foundation of the Orioles going forward. Of course, Manny Machado, Adam Jones, and Jonathan Scope look like they're going to be that foundation, but a player like Kevin Gausman, is he part of that foundation, or should the Orioles maybe give some consideration to perhaps, including him in a trade offer in order to go for it all this season or to get pieces for their farm system going forward?
Very, very exciting. Very exciting stuff. Connor, what's going on at BSR? What do you want to plug? What can you tell us about?
Right now, I probably don't have anything planned. I was thinking doing something this week later about something related to probably trade moves or guys that they could target. So
this time of year? No, get out. That seems crazy. It's crazy talk.
Yeah, it's a little early, I know.
All right, well, that being the case, we'll be looking out for it on BaltimoreSportsReport.com. With that, that's going to do it here for Postgame Live. For Scott Magnus, for Connor Garcia, I'm Jake English saying we'll see you on Thursday.